jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Alrighty, welcome, ladies and gents. Thank you all for this opportunity. Chris Gersback, Beaulieu, and Frank Conniff are here for this conversation. They are here to promote their Manos tour, which is here on December 14th. So,
That'd be
I'm a-
crazy, a whole tour, Manos.
You know, if we were doing the road right now, I bet this would be a huge hit. It was stadiums we'd have to play.
Yeah.
totally. We had the honor of actually reviewing the 2 unofficial sequels, which brought Jackie back.
Oh, yeah.
There've been 2,
Yes.
Manos and even more Manos, or Get Back to Manos. Or...
It's a wide Manos world.
It's the MCU, the original.
Right, there you go, the Manos verse. I had the honor of meeting you guys in person back in September 2017 with the Tom Servo puppet in hand, and Trace remarked that I knew way too damn much about you guys, and he's right, so I won't bore you.
Could you tell me what that spot on my neck is then? Because I think it might
I
be,
don't know, I'm not a
might be
stalker, I
canceled.
swear.
if you know so much, what am I
You
sitting on?
knew. It's like that Jerry Seinfeld book, Scary Stories About Famous People. So for the duo here, what earlier stand-up days would you remark as the key moments from when you realized you were in this business for the long run?
I'm still waiting to realize that.
Would you
Never
hurry
came
up and
around.
be successful? Because I'd like to get a job off you.
And,
To
I
hell
don't
with
know.
it.
You know, when I first met Trace, which was in the I think 1986 in or 87 maybe in
Around in there.
Minneapolis, we were both met because we both did stand-up comedy. Trace did improv as well, and you know, back then, and I was just starting out. You know, there was great uncertainty about will this you know, am I going to be able to, am I really doing this? You know, I was making a living, which was good. I was making a very meager living, tiny, but just barely getting by. But I didn't have to have a day job, so that was awesome.
Right.
But there's always that worry, you know, and I don't know if that insecurity ever really goes away, because then when I got on Mystery Science Theater, and it was successful, and it won awards, and everyone, it was acclaimed, and I felt like I'm going to be working in the TV business as a comedy writer forever, and it didn't really work out that way. You know, I mean, I've had my good years and my bad years, but thanks to our fans, we're in the good years now, thanks to
Always.
our fans, because they've been so
Yes.
supportive of us. But you know, but there's always that. I think everyone in this business has it in the back of their mind that it's all going to go away tomorrow. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good way
or
of putting it.
like immediately.
Yeah.
Right.
This will go away while I'm performing.
That's very true. Right. So, Trace, you want to weigh in on that, or?
Yeah, you know, I had I went down the corporate path. I was like in a real job with an office and all those aren't real jobs.
Which became Best Brains offices, right?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, they the Best Brains offices had been vacated by a screen printing company that I had also worked with. And so I know the building well. And my brother's company generously gave us that old printing facility. It was a warehouse and office in a suburb. So it was perfect for us. We had a place to make a studio and offices. And my brother graciously gave it to us for no rent
Ooh.
Wow.
for, I think, a year. So
Oh, I didn't even know that.
we were very fortunate because we'd looked at other spaces to, once we moved out of KTMA at other studios. One was the public television station, which was very, very tiny. So it allowed us to build a standing set, have two big sets, the movie set, if you can call it that. And we had a huge writing room with a kitchen and
That whole building that was a huge space, you know.
yeah. At one point, Comedy Central or the Channel or whatever it was called wanted us to come to New York and do our show in their studios when they were already doing like 6 shows out of this studio. And it was a tiny, tiny space, low ceilings. And it's like, well, we got it made here. And the fact that it was Minnesota, no one wanted to visit. So it aided our isolation and you know what Frank is talking about, you know, you never know if you're going to have another job, you know. When would we ever have that job, you know, creating a show in Eden Prairie, Minnesota?
Not going to be in the yellow pages or Indeed.com, that's for sure.
I don't think there's any other show that was made in Eden Prairie, Minnesota that people are still talking about, though, other than this show.
Not even remotely.
Yeah, was Comedy Central like really?
Minneapolis or the Twin Cities became very active hotbed of like home and garden shows, right?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Like after we were done, but then there was a lot of TV production of mainly those kind of you know, home repair shows or whatever.
It fueled a whole community of underpaid artists and technicians.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank God it did. So here's a follow-up. What comedians in general were you the most inspired by in terms of developing your comedic style?
Boy, I think for me, Laurel and Hardy, the Marx Brothers, all the really old stuff.
You mentioned Art Carney in one interview.
Yeah, all of those. Everybody who was on television who was funny. I mean, we were like flies to a porch light. You know, there were shows that were must see, like Ed Sullivan, and that was entertainment. That was the whole.
And the Tonight
Show, yeah.
And for me too, I grew up like every afternoon at 4:30 when I got home from school, I'd watch the Mike Douglas show.
Yeah, there you go.
Just immersed in show business.
Yeah, Dick Cavett too.
And Dick Cavett late at night, and Carson and the Joey Bishop show, and the Merv Griffin show, which was on at 8:30 at night. You know.
And you were lucky enough to have Joe Franklin.
Joe Franklin at 2 a.m. So, yeah, I was just very enamored and influenced by all those people. And then when we were doing stand-up comedy, you know, there were a lot of our contemporaries as stand-ups who were just so great, you know, and so inspiring, like Dana Gould.
Dana, yes.
There you go, Dana,
Maria
man.
Bamford, who was a friend of ours, as was Dana. But Maria, I mean, I knew Maria from her open mic days in Minneapolis, and you know, and then and people like Greg Proops or Tom Kenny or
there we go,
you know, all of these Bobcat Goldthwait, you know,
legends.
Just really, you know, that we being involved in like one-nighter comedy in the 80s, you saw mostly the worst comedy you're ever going to see in your life. Like terrible, hacky, misogynistic, homophobic.
But after I performed, there was a juggler, so they would kind of
right. 3/4 of it sucks. So here we go.
Time, you know, there was like a plethora of amazingly great comedians working, and to this day, like I still think stand-up comedy has so many great people who are doing it. You know.
And Minneapolis had always had a great scene and still
Oh
does
yeah,
with Acme Comedy and Louis Lee's maintaining it as just a absolute best place to do comedy. That's why I don't do it anymore, because that's the best place.
Liz Winstead, Jeff Cesario, Louis Anderson, a guy nobody's heard of named Sid Youngers, who's like the funniest man who ever lived. You know,
We got to fix that. We got to get him on. That's great. So Trace, not enough gets asked about what prompted your interest in art design prior to just your TV show. Were you always very artistic, just drawing?
Yeah, always making stuff and art classes, and that's where I hung out in school, there in the theater. But also just being inspired by science fiction movies. All these wee movies that we've looked at over the years, we encountered as kids on TV, and I just loved, the fantasy of it and the make believe and Star Trek and all that stuff. It just I still build stuff.
Now I know who to master the Forbidden Planet graphic novel expansion.
There's more than one. Is there a job in this for me? Is that what you're saying?
Might as well be. All right, Frank. So prior to being the movie connoisseur who picked everything for all three of your shows, did you also apply this in your personal life, where you were going to decide the only stuff that got shown in your household?
well, in my adult life, my household has been mainly just me, so
Perfect.
that's not a problem. And by the way, I did pick the movies on Mystery Science Theater, but Cinematic Titanic and The Mads Are Back is much less so on my part. Most of
You can just say no.
I think Trace has found most of them. Chris has found some.
A lot of fans send in stuff
Yeah.
now too.
I
So.
found a couple,
They've
but
been
it's
very
not-
kind. They're like, I don't think anyone's gonna like this.
And Cinematic Titanic was the same way. They Joel found a lot of the films that we did.
Right?
Frank unearthed so many toxic films that his immune system has been compromised.
Oh, way. Too
Same
soon.
6 feet of all bad films.
I think Manos alone. I mean, that's like dodging a bullet. That's like stepping on a landmine and being able to walk home.
That's ultimately I'm going to have to answer for Manos one day.
But you're answering for it now, right? Because we got to write it again.
I'm writing it again, which I know. You know what? I'm currently writing it, and I haven't seen it since we did it. And it's not very good, I have to say.
Hey,
It gets a bad rap.
at least you conjured Torgo the White and helped make all these other hack artists in Texas decide, hey, I can pick up a camera. No, you shouldn't.
So in the subsequent sequels or the Manos trilogy, does Torgo come back?
Yes, he does. And the guy did one hell of a job. Like, one of them was like intentionally bad, like one of those Sharknado type shit fest, and another one was like
that's just
very-
wrong.
and another one was very serious. And Jackie's in both of them just looking confused, but like in one of them she becomes the master, so that's a fun twist on the
Oh,
whole
wow.
the premise that could have worked, but
The spoiler.
Yeah.
spoiler. Yeah, I pulled a Shyamalan.
Does each episode, is it like The Godfather where it's a different era of the family?
Well, one of them is definitely better than Godfather 3, I will say that much.
They changed the third Manos film's name to The Death of Torgo Coda.
Right.
They did.
I think Jackie's also going to be in a new series that's coming out.
I think so. I don't know if it's crowdfunded or what, but
There's a
bless her heart.
series
Like a
A Torgo
Manos series. Yeah.
Oh,
is it like on a real network or?
It
I think
seems-
it's just the internet.
Yeah, it seems like fan.
Unless they pitch it to
type of
Shudder.
Oh, cool. Well,
is it Meet the Torgos?
I hope they do a sitcom anthology just featuring.
Or he could be a cop.
Oh, there you go.
Torgo PI or something.
Yeah. There you
Why am I
go.
giving these ideas away, Frank?
I mean, you can't have just Torgo the White and Second Banana Heaven. You got to expand that.
So there's 3 movies. There's like a restored, like high def version, and there's like a puppet and a musical, and
yeah, I've seen part of the puppet musical. Someone sent me the
Mhm.
tape.
Right? Hey,
Does that exist in the Torgo MCU, or is that like
Well,
like a
the
Sony?
well,
I-
it's not canon. I have to say.
Okay.
that's the DC knockoff. Anyway, so Chris, how did you get the opportunity to work for both these masterminds?
I met Frank. I lived in Astoria, Queens, which is like kind of like I lived there for like 10 years, and then it kind of became like a hip sort of neighborhood in Queens to live. And this comedy club QED opened in Astoria like 2014, and that's when I
Nice.
started doing stand up right around that same time. And then Frank was like one of the first shows to be booked at QED.
I did the very first show at QED.
Very first show, yeah.
Cartoon Dump was the very first one done there.
Yeah, so Frank was doing Cartoon Dump, and then I guess that's how I started working at QED shortly after and just producing a lot. And became friends with Carolina Hidalgo. We were both doing stand up a lot, and then Frank and I started co-producing a show called Open Riff Night. I think like a year before everything shut down, we started it, and
At least a year, maybe more.
might have
It
been
was
even
before
more.
the
Yeah.
podcast and the in between stuff.
Yeah, it was like it was so much fun. The idea was basically like it's an open mic for riffing, so anyone could come up, and we had clips of movies that people could riff on, and it was super fun. And then Frank and Trace had been touring, and then the pandemic happened, and Frank reached out to me and asked if there was any way to do it online, and that's and from there we just did a lot of research and tests and everything to make sure we could actually do it properly and have it be fun. And
Which
and it's
only
been
Chris could have figured out. Neither of us could have figured that out.
No,
This was essential to this whole thing.
Right. Have
But,
you, Chris, ever been mistaken for Jonah Ray?
it happens. I think what's funny. We started rebroadcasting the shows from the very beginning, and the very first show, like I had never intended, like I don't think we even discussed, like I never intended to even be on camera until
Right.
the very end of the
Someone had to do
show. And so the first show, like I don't even have my camera on when I introduced Trace and Frank, and then at the end I turned my camera on, and I just remember like the chat just being like, "Is Chris secretly Jonah Ray?" And, like, and that's how it started. And like
Never been in the same room.
every time since then, people start mentioning it in the chat or comment on a tweet or whatever. But it's it's an honor to be compared to Jonah Ray, so
There you
I
go.
don't complain.
Nice. So just going back a little bit in the time tunnel, again, Trace, you've been able to do a fun batch of cameos and independent films. How did you, it was very logical course for you to then show up as the writing staff on America's Funniest Home Videos. Did you have any other writing projects that almost came to fruition that occasionally you look back at?
not really. I moved out to Los Angeles, and this is after about a year after I left Mystery Science. And I didn't do anything for a while, went on a few auditions and stuff. And then it was Josh, J. Elvis, said, "Hey, I'm going to head write the kind of reimagining America's Funniest as a hip, edgy Friday night comedy show." And
Is that like the Fugelsang era?
yes, the John Fugelsang, Daisy Fuentes era. And it was 9 o'clock, I think, on Friday nights. I did that for 2 seasons, but that was Josh. I have a career through Mystery Science Theater as long as I just keep working with the same people from Mystery Science Theater.
Perfect. Oh man, how did the Adult Swim show Tigtone land on your desk?
I had met one of the producers. I had this really dumb idea, which I actually brought to fruition, which was to do a musical and have Frank play Frankenstein's monster. And it was a musical called The Frank. So that's the range of my thinking there, is like anything I could put Frank's name on. So we made Frank up as Frankenstein's monster. And when I was doing the post-production on it and the authoring of the DVD, I met one of the producers. And it's the great thing about the community of all these performers and actors and comedians that we've met over the years, everyone kind of stays in touch and goes, "Oh, there's that guy. He's available." So it was
Oh,
Andrew Kohler is the producer's name. I don't know if I'm allowed to
Nice.
say that. The
that,
show's no
that's
longer in production.
in general.
Right.
In general, that's how you get jobs in show business. At least that's been the case for
Yeah.
me. That you meet people and you become friends with them, and then that can lead to work. It's totally been the case for me because as a stand-up comedian, I met Trace and I met Mike Nelson, and when an opening became available on Mystery Science Theater, Mike Nelson thought of me and hired me. Um, and then I've gotten subsequent jobs in a similar fashion where you just know somebody
You pick their
and
brain.
they bring you, they know you, they know what you can do, and they bring you in. So people starting out, comedians or comedy writers, I would just tell them to get your work out there so that you can work with other people, and then expand your world so that those other people that you work with and you meet, whether through performing or from writing and making, now, people making YouTube videos and all that stuff,
Mhm.
just go out and do it, and then you never know where it's going to lead.
Yeah,
Sure.
I never got work through an audition or through,
Yeah.
sending my jokes around. It was always from pity.
Well, that goes without saying.
Perfectly said. So Frank, out of all the '90s sitcoms you worked on, and
Both of them.
Sabrina, well, I mean,
All both.
you did Invader Zim, Drew Carey, and
Right.
Sabrina. Do you have any segments that you're the proudest of? Like, just you always just got the segments just stuck in your head. You're like, I'm so glad they were able to perform
Um,
that.
yeah, I mean, it's I have ones that I look back on fondly. Episodes of Sabrina. Like for instance, when we had the cast of Laugh-In on Sabrina, like that
Yeah.
that was heaven for me. I love that, and you know when you work on a sitcom as opposed to working on something like Mystery Science Theater was sort of more like being in a band than being working on a
Yeah.
Yeah.
TV show. That was more the vibe of it, where everybody contributed and everybody's voice was kind of heard in the final product. Whereas when you work on a sitcom or say a late night talk show, which I've worked on a couple of times, it's not really your voice; it's the voice of the host or
Right.
the voice of the showrunner, and you're trying to adjust yourself um, to that voice, and that can be a little awkward, but it can also, turn out gratifying and fun too. But
Beneficial.
it's a whole different thing. So when I look back on like Sabrina and the Drew Carey show, there's not as much of me there is, I'd say in Sabrina there's more of me than in the Drew Carey show, which I only worked on for one season. But
Yeah.
there's an episode of the Drew Carey show where they're all in a mental institution.
That's
Kind
right.
of the one that I feel like
Yes.
has the most of my voice in it. Has a lot of my voice in it. The name of the place is the Mary Todd Lincoln Mental Institution. That was,
Mary Tylingon, yes.
you know,
Nice.
so but like something like Mystery Science Theater or the Mads are back, or Cinematic Titanic,
That's more you.
and a couple, it's all of our voices kind of blending and becoming one voice, whereas other shows are just one person's voice, and then you figure out how to write in that voice.
Oh, totally. And I mean, after your work on Podhouse 90 and the film God Bless America, when I saw how Amazon TV was picking up a bunch of pilots and they had in consideration, you did an animated pilot called I Confess, and I thought it was just downright brilliant. You just think animated,
Oh, that's right. That was with Paul Kozlowski,
yeah,
who was a friend of mine in LA. Really, uh, very talented, brilliant, not just a comedian but an artist. And he
right,
ran a place in LA called the Fake Gallery, and yeah, he did that on like kind of flash animation. It was, and Eddie Pepitone was on that, Laura Keitlinger, really great people. So
yeah.
uh,
You got
But
to
that
work with
was
Mary
so
Lynn.
long ago. I had to take a minute to remember what that was.
Yeah, it's all
And
good.
I'm like, yeah, you're right. That was really good.
And do you just think animated satire just there's too many programming executives that just flies over their head? They just
Well,
have to
I think it's not that it flies over their head, but it's just really hard. You know, that was a thing that was made independently by Paul, and then just getting people's attention, getting these executives to look at it, to consider it. That's a very daunting thing.
it's very hard.
And you know, I know that now people. I love that people make their own content now, and that they put it out on YouTube, and that they don't wait for gatekeepers to give them the go ahead. They just go out and do it. You know, but once you do that, you've got to realize that if it moves up to the next level, you know, like for instance, the way like Broad City did, or something like that,
That's
where
a good
it was
contrast.
it was an internet thing that just some people made, and then it got on Comedy Central. You know, that's a really hard thing to make happen. That requires a lot of work on your part, and then the the really important element of luck has to come in somehow, where your the timing of it is right, and that's why I think people should just do as much as they can, work on as much things as they can, get them out there, and then a lot of it isn't up to you, but the more stuff that you do, the more chance you'll have of something like that happening.
Totally. And you guys have again nonstop just showcased it how you're not afraid to experiment with the various comedic styles and uh, different types of comedy. And you've illustrated many times just on the podcast in general, just what kind of movies get you up in the morning that just make you say, I love, cinema as a
Right.
whole. Trace, would you say that with today's movies, I mean, you've already talked endlessly about how, they're too overlong or too confusing in plots. Would you say that this kind of goes back to how you guys kind of market yourselves. Would you say that the marketing and budgets are just kind of too out of control on movies these days?
Uh, yes and no. I mean, there's always going to be the independent guys that have the passion to make it with nothing. And those are, often the gems that you remember. We might not remember Aquaman as well as we do today, 20 years from now, but there's a small, independent film that's being made right now with somebody that is going to blow that stuff out of the water. It's going to be
Hopefully.
real. And, like the Florida Project that,
Good contrast.
one of
better
Frank's
William
favorite
Dafoe movie.
films. You compare that to like an Aquaman and you go, why did you even make that? It's like when you've got
Mhm.
something this soulful. And I think a lot of movies just don't have that.
Right.
They can. I mean, look at Dune. I mean, that's a huge movie,
Right.
but completely satisfying, all the way around. There's going to be good and bad. I mean, that's the amazing thing about still doing what Frank and I are doing with these older B movies or bad movies or whatever you want to call them, is that we're still finding them. So there's an endless supply. And if we wanted to do Independence Day, whatever 4 or whichever one they're on,
Yeah.
that's still going to be there.
Right.
But harvesting these from the era that we're looking at, mostly the late 50s, early 60s, it's like my uncle left me this gold mine. They say it's no good anymore, but look, here's another movie. And we found a ton of them over the last year and a half. Has it been now that we've been doing this?
Yeah, I think like you guys ran out of movies after like the first 6 shows or
Yeah.
something. At least movies that you were touring with.
You guys found a few lost treasures that I was like, yeah, I thought only Svengoolie knew about that.
Yeah, and a lot of that is fans sending stuff in. But,
Yeah.
Internet Archive is it's like an incredible resource just for public domain material, and there's just so much. Like I feel like every time I start to search, I just find new ones. And a lot of them aren't good for riffing, but it's kind of like an endless black hole of public domain content that could be mined.
It's amazing. To still find these things like Phantom from Space.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard of that one before.
Right.
How did that?
Probably got
Unless it
played
was
one
just
night
too
in the
bad
theater.
for us to do.
The one with Robert Loggia, like I never heard of.
Oh
that.
yeah, the Lost Missile. Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
fan.
yeah.
He sent that one in.
That one would always pick
I
up
like
in a
it.
film cult film book, and I was like, but where do I find it? It's not going to
Yeah.
be at any video store.
I mean, that's also the other thing is like it's so much easier to access this stuff.
yes.
You know, even than it was 5-10 years ago.
Right.
So it's kind of nice that the show's, you know, gone online in this era where we could find, you know, just all these other movies online to use.
Something that isn't Netflix.
Right.
And you don't want
Although they're making a few bad movies now and again.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I'm getting at. You don't want
You
just
know
something
what?
for Netflix.
I have to say, I've proven over and over again that if Netflix puts out a movie, which they do every week, just about a trained assassin who wants to leave the business, and then the company that hired them tries to kill them. If they're going to keep making that movie, and I'm going to keep watching it. That's all.
Okay. Well, let's hope there's more Equalizer John Wick knockoffs because there haven't been too many lately. And Frank, you again. Every era has their landmark stars, and you've talked, you know, nonstop about just so many just beloved actors, including Dragnet's Jack Webb. Who would you say is going to be remembered for this last 2 decades that will be remembered fondly as opposed to infamously?
Fondly, I mean, you know, the era of the last 20 years has maybe been the greatest era ever in television. You know,
Right.
so it's not a stretch, and it's no great insight for me to say that people are still going to be watching Breaking Bad. People are still going to be watching The Sopranos. People are going to still be watching Mad Men, Game of Thrones. You know, so many good shows. I think there might be one or two that I'm not aware of because there's so much. It's
Too much.
It's up with stuff. You know, there's probably one or two that are really brilliant that I don't even know about. You know, so.
And then something new comes out, like the Beatles Get Back thing came out, and that
I
just
was
like
actually going to ask you
shot up
guys
in the
had you seen
queue.
that one.
Yeah,
I'm watching the Beatles Get Back, and I'm seeing people on Twitter are loving it, and I love the Beatles, but it's going to take me a long time to watch it. You know, it's
Right.
Yeah,
It's-
Behind on
the
5
same reaction.
as much as I love them, just watching them rehearse and stuff. You know, I can't. When it premiered like last weekend, I was like, I've got my weekend set up. I'm going to watch.
Yeah.
I watched like an hour of it, and I just have made it through the first part now, and I
Oh,
still
wow.
have,
Right.
which means
Gonna
I still
take a-
have 4 more hours to go.
Gonna
Yeah,
take a
I'm
while
only
before.
on the second one, and I had that same reaction. And I was wondering if it's like, since I've hung around with bands while they rehearse, and it's kind of like a writer's room where there's a lot of like fooling around and goofing around to get in that zone, if that was it. But I'm at the end of, I'm just in the middle of the third one. Don't give it away.
that's
haven't
where
seen
I
it.
am too.
I'm
haven't seen
ready
the
to
last
quit
hour.
the Beatles.
So there you guys got it. Yeah, you've answered your you've
Yeah,
answered too
so
many of these.
my method is just watch it, like not 3 hours at a time, like
Yeah, no.
half
Yeah.
hour or an hour at a time. So
No.
it's just good because it's going to take me a while to
Take you
watch the whole
weeks.
thing.
What pissed me off the most was how shitty their craft service is. They get like
You have
toast.
Toast every day.
They get toast.
That's all they eat.
Of all things, they're just nothing but
I think
nonstop
it's
carbs.
just the aesthetic of British people that we can't have good stuff to eat. You know?
Yeah. Oh, white bread. What do you mean, flavor?
That's why they're so pissy.
Also, one thing I noticed too, and they're there for hours. Like, really, the chairs don't look comfortable at all.
No.
Ooh.
Well, George keeps putting a pillow on his chair.
Yeah, I
He's
know.
got
I
two
noticed
pillows.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. The
Like-
things old men look at.
yeah. Bring in some. Well, yeah. Well, that's the
Well,
thing.
in that they had to use George's equipment. It's like, these are the Beatles. They should be able to like pull these things from anywhere.
There is a
Yeah.
part, I think in part 3, where John's like, because like mics keep feedbacking, and he's like talking to George Martin. He's like, why can't we just get speakers that don't feedback? And he's kind of just saying like, we're the Beatles. Like, why can't we just do that?
We are the Beatles. So you
Well,
guys have heard
they
it
borrow
there.
the equipment from EMI too, don't they?
Yes,
Yeah.
just a different time then. It was
Didn't you think of buying your own? You built a studio.
Right.
And they've got to leave so they can film the Magic Christian. You know?
Yes. Yes.
Ah,
That's actually a really cool, uncomfortable sequence when they meet Peter Sellers.
Yeah,
Oh my
I
God.
haven't got there yet. I heard that Peter Sellers is in it. I'm
Oh,
looking
it's
Nice.
insane. It's so
Yeah.
insane.
for sure.
A battle of egos.
I'm surprised he didn't have them cameo in a Pink Panther movie back in
And
the day.
also, I want to say to Yoko, you know, you're in London. Why don't you go for a walk or something?
The first part alone, I could not get over how many shots there were of her just reading a newspaper.
Yeah,
like
just
while
think,
they're
like she
Move
must,
the plot along.
like maybe that's part of her genius or whatever. She can sit there forever and not be bored out of her mind. Because I would have, like, within a half hour, I'd be like, look, I'm gonna take a walk, maybe catch a movie.
Get something to eat.
Done by 5 or something. I'll come back. There's no way I would have just sit there all day. It's crazy.
Yeah, you would have to just really love doing nothing.
I'm surprised that the cheapness of like their gear, not their instruments necessarily, but that they've got to borrow stuff, and that little pen they put around Ringo for sound. It's just like some crap that I would build out of some 2x4s and big screws, and it just seemed very odd. And they had just built that studio, right?
I believe
Yeah.
so.
So that they could end.
So you've heard it from them guys. It's going to be a while before they get into all these other hit shows like Bosch and Foundation and Ted Lasso. we got to take a while to just digest the Beatles.
oh yeah.
Going back to the tour, how did you first get in touch with Jackie Ray Neiman Jones, who played Debbie in Manos, The Hands of Fate, and invite her to this tour?
Well, we'd met her in Portland, I think.
Yeah, Portland.
And
Where she lives, right?
I think so. Yeah. And it just seemed like a natural, we always love to get new guests on the show. And
Yeah.
Yeah, these movies, it's hard to get a guest that's associated with the movie. The only other time we did that was when we had Vincent Price's daughter
Oh,
for the Tingler. So mainly we get our comedian friends or our MST3K compatriots come on as our guests, and that's great. But this was an instance where someone who was actually in the movie. How often is that going to happen with our movies?
yes.
yeah. And she's just a delightful person because you guys have joked in the past is like you have to rely on doing all these movies where the people are long gone and dead. They're not going to be complaining at how dare you take on my movie. I put my heart into it even though it's a piece of crap. And just we had her on the show one time about a year and a half ago, and just seeing how her father, who made the movie, for goodness sakes, had your show on, and he was just guffawing. He's like, "Oh, I knew my movie would make its way to someone somewhere." I was just like, such a rarity to see someone who is embracing. Just was like, "Hey, I made an imperfect movie."
Although,
But
most of the actors who have seen us riff their movies have in every case I can think of liked it. Trace is friends with Kim Cattrall based on the fact that he riffed her
right,
in the movie.
great way to get fan mail.
And
Sounds so unsavory.
I worked with Robbie Benson in L.A. He was in that same movie, and he was really good about it, really nice, and thought it was funny. And Beverly Garland,
Ooh,
the
baby,
highlight
yes.
of my life was meeting her.
Yes, lovely.
Her like just being so delightful and sweet, and saying how enjoyable it all was. So.
What about Joe Don Baker? Did you guys ever run into him?
We
That's
never
just
did.
right.
We ran into his cousin in
No.
on the road. We've a couple of times his cousin has come to our shows,
Really?
but could neither confirm or deny the rumor that
He
Jodan
just
wanted to
wants to be
attack us.
nice.
This is just one movie out of his career. You know, he's a great actor. I mean,
Yeah.
we
Right.
took the piss out of him, but you know, he's quite a phenomenal actor. I mean, Buford Pusser is amazing. When I was a kid, that movie came out, and just I was stunned by
That
that.
was a huge hit, and it's
Walking Tall, yeah.
Very much so. When you got Jackie involved, obviously she's very open to the possibility and everything. How did you start the collaboration?
I think Dean, friends with Dina Dolphin, who does like a lot of Mystery Science Theater fan stuff. She, I want to say like about a year ago, had asked me about having Jackie on, and it didn't. I think at the time we still Manos, like we weren't thinking like that would ever be a show that
We'll
we would
never be
do.
that desperate.
Right.
She has like an arts and crafts show and does like a lot of knitting and a gift shop. So yeah, she's
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, she keeps doing those hands robe gown things,
Yeah.
which are amazing.
For Halloween.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, Dina had pitched me the idea about a year ago, and then it was just like, well, if we were going to have her on, it would be because we're doing Manos, but Manos wasn't like on the table. And then I think like back in September or August, Frank and I finally forced Trace to agree to do Manos, and then
Finally, reusing your best.
and then it was just like a month ago or so. I reached out to Dina, and she put us in touch with, or put me in touch with Jackie, and then that was pretty much it. And she was immediately on board with doing it. And I think that was one of the first times we've been able to announce the show and the guest at the same time, because usually the guests are booked like a week before, like at most, sometimes like a few days before. Just because people's schedules are so crazy, it generally makes more sense to just wait till the last minute to book people sometimes. But with Jackie, it was like, if we announce we're doing Manos, and you know, like her name has to be on it, because obviously she's going to be the choice as our guest. So,
Stellar.
yeah.
I hope the Q&A goes very well. Any other details for that Zoom event that you want to remind everyone about?
Tickets you can get at themadsmanos.eventbrite.com. They're $10. That includes a download. So even if you can't watch it live, you could just buy a ticket. That'll just reserve your download. You
Perfect.
have it, it'll get emailed to you. You save it to the end of time.
It's not like Mission Impossible where this will detonate in 5
right.
seconds.
And I think that was a big thing when we were first talking about doing this show, is that we wanted to make sure people, you know, could pay $10 and also be able to keep it, because I just assume that's what most kinds of like live stream type of shows would do if they sold tickets to it, but apparently not. Apparently it's like you have to be there to watch it or you miss it. So
Right.
so yeah, the downloads, it's been, I want to say like half of the people that buy tickets are buying them to watch him, you know, at their leisure when they
Then
can.
and there.
Yeah.
How long did you estimate that it took you to just kind of hack the system for a while after you had already mastered social media?
As far as like selling tickets,
Tickets and just getting the word of mouth in the group.
I mean,
Because it is kind of like circulating the tapes, but 2.0.
yeah. I mean, obviously, like the Mads, they already had, you know, they had a very, very well followed Facebook page, and a very, very engaging Facebook group as well. And you know, from the get go, it was kind of just like an instant hit, and you know, we're like, how long can this last? It's gonna, you know, dip at some point, and it's only gotten, you know,
Right.
bigger as it's gone.
When you have to panic and have the backup plan.
Right. But it's really just the fans have been so supportive, and you know, they just, you know, there's always that word, like Trace was saying earlier, like this could all disappear tomorrow, but you know, and obviously it's been a lot of steady work to keep it that way, but
Right.
you know, it's been like an absolute blessing the past year and a half, and especially during how crazy the past 2 years have been, you know, just to be able to make a living without having to leave our apartments is it's
Totally.
pretty great. Yeah.
Do you guys think you might revisit the podcast or even Podhouse 90 together? Or is that just kind of one and done for now?
Well, you mean the movie sign with the Mads podcast?
Yeah, movie sign with the Mads. Yeah.
That I don't know if that particular one will happen, because the reason we're not doing this is because Carolina is unable to do it, and she has a very full plate with her other podcasts and her life, and so if Carolina came back and said I wanted to do it, I bet we do it, but she's got a lot of other stuff going, and we're very supportive of what she wants.
Yeah, you should check out their No Dogs in Space podcast.
Podcast is great.
Sure. And she's done a good job just making guest spots with you guys. So
yeah.
And she's
You think you might get J. Elvis Weinstein on? He recently released a new stand-up album, which was comedy gold.
Yeah, we had him on at Christmas time. We did a Santa movie, and it was Andy Kindler and Josh.
That's right.
And that's actually a great idea to have him on to promote his album. I think.
Totally.
Is this a new album?
Yeah, very recent. He did it like in between while he and Andy were doing their Thought Spiral podcast. But for whatever reason, the Misties don't seem to know about it. They know about Mike and everyone else, but it's like, come on, guys, give these guys some more love.
Yeah. Well, Josh he's so hilarious and so talented that he'd be welcome.
I'm not the Simpsons writer. Stop asking me that.
Well, go check out Josh's his Twitter, because there's links to all his movies that he's made, the documentaries on Michael DeBar and I Want You to Kill, the stand-up documentary that he did.
That was a good one.
And I think there's links to all of that at J Elvis, at J Elvis.
Yeah, J Elvis Weinstein.
For sure. And Frank, you've been comedy gold with your tweets. I'm surprised you haven't contributed to the Daily Show or Young Turks.
Well, I'm a Young Turks veteran. Actually, I used to be Young Turks years ago. Like when I lived in LA in like around 2010, that period, they would have me on as guests. So I'm friends with all of them.
Wonderful.
But I haven't been on lately. I'm kind of like washed up in the far left wing podcasting world. I used to be a big deal in the world.
Yeah, you were working with Jimmy Dore. And
I was on the Jimmy Dore show. I was on the David Feldman show. I was on the John Fugelsang show. And I'm not welcome in any of those places. No, that's not true. It's still has me on as a guest occasionally, but I'm not. Fugelsang, he welcomes me, but SiriusXM doesn't welcome me, and my politics is because of my politics. Jimmy Dore and David Feldman, there's really not a place for me there anymore. But they're still my friends and everything. It's I joke about it. It's not like a.
Wait, did Feldman have a heel turn that I didn't hear about? Did Feldman have a heel turn I didn't hear about, or is he?
Oh, I don't want to get into that.
No, sorry.
It's all good. Nowadays, we got so many different political divisions.
So I like to, as far as left-wing podcasts go, I would like to portray myself as a free speech martyr, like a Lenny Bruce. But the truth is, I'm really the McLean Stevenson of left-wing podcasts.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, I've been canceled from all of that.
Right. Cancel the cancelers, cancel all the other awful people in the world.
I would just like to pitch some bold programming, though. You as the sidekick on the Chris Christie talk show.
Oh, my God.
Very controversial. What's that?
How would they see me?
There you go.
Personally,
it's perfect, though. You just get to, court jester him the whole time.
I mean, I don't know. I always thought Jeff Garland could play him in a movie, and Frank could just be the director and writer.
Oh, Jeff Garland, that's actually a good idea.
Okay.
Is that a widescreen release?
Yes. And Jeff is going to have to put his, morals to the side. He's like, I'm going to betray a pig, and I'm going to. There you go. Work with Adam McKay, and we're going to do the satire about a terrible person.
Chris Christie, Pig in the City.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Anything you got to do, any subtitle you got to steal from another movie sequel.
They
'Cause it's not gonna,
almost all work.
right. Chris
In
Christie,
space,
Electric
no one can
Boogaloo.
hear you scream. You know?
Yes. Okay, so this comes from podcaster Nathan Spavold. After riffing for a living most of your lives, do you constantly riff on just other things? I already know Trace's answer to the past is like his wife had to tell him to shut up when they're watching a movie. But do you ever constantly just let your just inner thoughts out? You're like,
I never riff as a busman's holiday ever.
never.
I
You have discipline.
and people, you know, and we talked about this on another show the other day, is that people assume that we just like to watch bad movies, and that any
Unfiltered.
movie we watch, all we want to do is yell out riffs and be disruptive. And I'm the opposite of that. When I'm watching a movie that I like, or that I want to like, just a movie that I'm getting into, I don't want to hear anybody making any comments or.
Well, we just asked because there's some sides of that. Like whenever someone does a badass fighting move, you are gonna sometimes just exclaim badass, you know, but it's not meant to offend or anything, but you're just reacting to what's on screen.
I do yell out badass, but it's during Ingmar Bergman movies, which is weird.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. No explosions.
But no, I
get
don't.
under the
I don't. You know, and I watch like Marvel movies or most Star Wars movies. I watch them with completely riveted attention and just really just caught up in it. I'm not like my mind isn't in a sarcastic, snarky place at all. I just I love movies, you know, and I love watching them. And
So
What
you go
about
into
during the
Kevin
trailers?
mode.
Do you riff the trailers, Frank? When you're watching a movie?
sometimes I might.
Pretentiousness
Well,
in
the
HD.
thing that I take in trailers, and I almost always tweet about it afterwards, is the slow, moody, ironic version of a popular song that plays through every trailer now. You know, that's like driving me
Yeah.
crazy. But
Oh dear, marketing. How about you, Chris? Did you find out that before you worked with the Riffs gods, did you actually just have that just as a thing where it's like you were the quiet kid in school and then you come home and you just kind of unload?
I mean, and honestly, not really. And I've never, I produced a riffing show at QED, as I mentioned earlier, but I myself never put myself in the riffing seat. And it's not, it's honestly like my favorite form of comedy, like to watch. I'm just like not quick enough. I think. I can't like think like. And I know like these guys write a lot of their stuff, but it's never been something that I've been comfortable doing.
Well, no,
And
that's a
even
good contrast because, like, Colin
yeah,
Mockery of Whose Line was at a improv show, and he's like, "I'm still having people who think that we are just saying this all scripted, and I just want to
right.
say, you guys are all bastards. We made this up." But it is kind of wild how, again, we've been seeing people just they get together with their pals and they put a video short together. I guess at this point, you're just gonna have to come out with Trace and Frank are gonna have to come out with a book called "Riffing for Dummies." Don't be an asshole. Don't offend everybody.
bad
And
idea.
I mean, I will
what?
say when Frank hosted Open Riff Night, he did offer advice at the top of the show to people because a lot of people they weren't comedians; they were just fans coming who
Yeah, the
wanted to.
hecklers is like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah, and I think what Frank said was like, just be pithy, don't be mean, don't
Yeah,
just keep it light and everything. And I think
don't be too
that's
over the top.
I think that's good advice.
And you have to watch it 5 times or just a certain amount of times to where you can put it up for that blog, not constant, just make it up.
Well, actually, we've done spontaneous shows, quite a few of them. A lot with the Master Pancake Group in Austin,
Yeah.
and those are totally unscripted. We don't see the movie until the audience selects it. They bring
Oh wow.
their bad movie, and they have to pitch the movie to the audience. So it's a really fun format for riffing
Yeah, I
for
saw which
everyone
one.
involved, the audience and the performers. It's just those have been gift shows when Frank and I do those.
Yeah, Joel hosted one that was like Casino Royale, the newer one, and then like Die Hard one night, and said he was reminding everyone, was like, hey, again, it can be a good movie or a bad movie or an overrated movie, but we're going to talk during this cult movie.
Exactly.
And you found the audience there.
I would never want to riff Die Hard.
Right. Well,
Another movie that I just want to watch it and enjoy it, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of those modern films that I just, there's no need to do that.
Right.
If I'm watching Die Hard, I'm watching Die Hard for enjoyment.
fair enough. I mean, they all seem
And I
very
would
much-
never even consider a movie like Citizen Kane or The Godfather or some, true classics. Why? What's the point in that?
Yeah,
It just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
totally. It just seems to vary by crowd, but as long as they're not riffing a war movie, only if it's a Canon Films production. Can
Or
you
actually,
riff it.
Frank and Trace we're going to announce this at the end of the Manos show. They're going to be riffing Glory for January.
Oh dear, more like
Hey,
gory.
if the copyright had lapsed, we'd be all over.
Yeah.
Oh man,
That's why Mike Nelson and Bridget did Charade for Riff, and Charade is a great movie, but I think they did it because it's public domain.
right.
Yeah.
Then again,
I can't even. I would get too wrapped up in the film and be
Yeah.
enjoying it, and I wouldn't be able
Plus,
to
the
say anything.
movie has great lines in it anyway. You know,
It's got to
why-
be an
Yeah.
absolute misfire for you to take on. But
Okay.
there's a cult movie that you guys mentioned just throughout your various comedy acts, Killdozer. That's kind of getting a resurgence. It just got the Blu-ray treatment, believe it or not, with 2 different commentary tracks. Have
I'm
you
so
been
happy.
Have you been tempted to ever take on that cult 70s terror film made for TV?
Like Trace said, if we could do it for free, maybe, you know.
I think it's in the public domain. That's why I'm bringing it up.
I think
Oh,
we've used the word killdozer so many times in these
7,000
movies over the years that I think its impact would be lost. I would probably
You
just go,
already ripped it
that's
to death."
killdozer. That's what we've been ripping. It's like Jim Cotta. I think it'd been years before we actually saw Jim Cotta.
There you go. The damage has already been done.
The title's all you need.
There you go. You've done some animated shorts with friend of the show, Rob Maynard. Can we expect more animated comedy ventures with him or with guesting on Reels of Justice?
I think Frank's actually going to be on Reels of Justice recording tomorrow. Actually,
Sweet.
Um,
That answers that.
what time tomorrow?
I'll send you the-
Chris, you're booking him too soon.
no, Rob's great. I've been on Reels of Justice. Both Trace and Frank have been on together at least a couple times.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not aware of the animated stuff that he's done, but he's a great guy.
I
so.
just saw this on IMDb.
Oh,
And,
cool.
and so you guys have pretty much answered just all the stuff in advance and just going to keep trucking along. Any other comedic guests who you might announce in the future?
We've got nobody booked yet, but
right.
we'll see
Never
who's
know.
alive.
Well, I have kept you guys way more than I should, and thank you ever so much for making this time and effort. And again, keep staying safe out there. Keep giving us.
Well, thanks for
motivation.
having us.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you
having
so
us.
much for having
Fun
us.
talking to you.
Been fun, yeah.
Always. I didn't want to keep you too long or just nerd out with this.
No, it was great.
It's been
It was
an hour.
No, thanks, Cam. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks a lot. They're good questions.
For once. Question mark.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies. I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games, music. Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers, the Google Play, Apple Podcasts,
what else?
Podbean,
what else?
Podcast Addict,
goddamn,
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair to say all that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was going to be a rough
How could you watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography, which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zamenhof, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zamenhof, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zamenhof.
Hi everybody, it's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything. Pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.